My husband made me donate a kidney to his mother. Said, prove your family. I did the surgery. Saved her life. 3 days later, still in the hospital, he served me divorce papers. His mother smiled from her bed. Thanks for the kidney. His girlfriend was in the room, wearing an engagement ring. 6 months later, they needed something else. Another organ. They called me desperate. I was still recovering from surgery when my husband handed me divorce papers. 3 days. That's how long he waited after I gave his mother my kidney. 3 days before he walked into my hospital room with his pregnant girlfriend and a lawyer carrying a briefcase full of documents that would erase me from his life. I couldn't sit up without help. The catheter was still in. The incision across my left side burned with every breath. And Ryan stood at the foot of my bed, wouldn't even look at me, while this blonde woman in designer yoga pants touched her swollen belly and smiled. These are for dissolution of marriage, Mrs. Bennett. The lawyer's voice was professional, almost bored. Like he did this every day. Like I wasn't lying there with half my insides missing, given to save a woman who just sent me a text message that said, "Thanks for the kidney. You were always temporary." I looked at Ryan. My husband of 7 years. The man I just sacrificed a piece of myself for. Why? He finally met my eyes. Mom needed you. Now she doesn't. That's when I understood. I wasn't family. I was spare parts. And they'd just gotten what they came for. But I should back up. Explain how I ended up here. How a high school art teacher from Grand Rapids, Michigan became an organ donor for a woman who saw her as disposable. My name is Maya Parker. Or was Maya Bennett back then. I was 32 years old, teaching art at Riverside High School, running a small after-school pottery program I funded with my own paycheck because the district budget never stretched far enough. I loved my students. Loved watching them discover they could create something beautiful with their own hands. It was the best part of my day. At home I managed everything. The bills. The mortgage. The retirement contributions. The grocery shopping. Every financial decision. Ryan always said he was better at sales than spreadsheets. He was a real estate agent, charming and ambitious, always chasing the next big commission. He'd come home late smelling like expensive client dinners and tell me about deals that were almost closed, or right around the corner. I handled the rest. That was our arrangement. It seemed fair at the time. Our marriage wasn't perfect. Ryan was distant sometimes. He worked late often. But I told myself that was normal. That's what marriage looked like after 7 years. The passion fades, the routine sets in, you build a life together. Right? I'd been noticing things though. Small things. Our savings account had been shrinking for months. 10,000 became 8, then 6, then 4. Every time I logged in to pay the mortgage or transfer money, the balance was lower. When I asked Ryan about it, he'd wave me off with that easy smile he used on clients. Market fluctuations, babe. My commission structure changed this quarter. It'll bounce back. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Because if I didn't, what did that say about me? About the 7 years I'd invested in this marriage? Then Gloria called. Late February, a Thursday night. Ryan was in his home office with the door closed. Something he did more and more. And I was grading student assignments at the kitchen table when his phone lit up on the counter. I saw her name on the screen. I almost didn't answer. Something told me to pick up. Why, Her voice sounded thin. Fragile. Is Ryan there? He's working. Is everything okay? There was a pause. A breath. Then, my kidneys are failing. Both of them. The doctors say I need a transplant. The room tilted. Gloria was only 63. She'd always seemed healthy, active. The kind of woman who posted about hot yoga classes and green smoothies on Facebook. Oh my God. Gloria, I'm so sorry. What can we do? They're testing the family. Ryan, Donald, Michelle. We'll know soon. Ryan came out of his office 20 minutes later. I told him about the call. He nodded slowly, his face blank. Yeah. She texted me earlier. Why didn't you tell me? I needed to process it first. The next week was a blur of medical appointments and family phone calls. Gloria's kidneys were deteriorating faster than expected. She needed a transplant within months, not years. The whole family got tested. Ryan, his father Donald, his younger sister Michelle, even Michelle's husband Greg. None of them were matches. Then Ryan came home on a Tuesday evening and sat down across from me at the kitchen table. His expression was careful. Controlled. They tested you too. From that blood panel you did last year for the life insurance policy. My stomach dropped. And your match. The only one. The weight of those words settled over me slowly. Heavy. Suffocating. Me. The doctors say you're near perfect. Better than anyone in the family. He reached across the table and took my hand. His palm was cold. I know it's a lot to ask. It was everything. But what was I supposed to say? Let my mother-in-law die because I was scared? The pressure started the next day. Gloria called every morning, her voice weak and trembling. Maya, sweetheart, I don't want to pressure you, but the doctors say time is critical. Donald showed up at our house with pamphlets about kidney donation. Statistics about survival rates. Glossy brochures showing smiling donors and grateful recipients. Michelle sent long text messages about family and sacrifice and how much Gloria had done for Ryan over the years. How she'd worked 2 jobs to put him through college. How she'd given him everything. I wanted to help. Of course I did. But something felt wrong. Our insurance had gaps I didn't know about. High deductibles. Out-of-network specialists. Copays that could run into tens of thousands. When I mentioned it to Ryan, his jaw tightened. Mom raised me. She worked herself to the bone for me. She gave me everything. His voice had an edge I rarely heard. Are you really going to let money stop you from saving her life? The guilt worked. I scheduled the surgery for 3 weeks out. My principal, Dr. Helen Crawford, called me into her office the day I submitted my medical leave paperwork. She was in her early 60s, sharp-eyed, with gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. Maya, are you sure about this? I nodded automatically. Yes. Of course. Helen studied me for a long moment. Her expression was hard to read. Organ donation is a beautiful thing. But it's also serious. Permanent. Life-altering. You need to be absolutely certain this is your choice. Not anyone else's. It is, I said, forcing a smile. I'm sure. But I wasn't. That night, I found Ryan in his office again, door closed, talking on the phone in a voice too low for me to hear clearly. When I opened the door, he hung up immediately. Just a client, he said without looking at me. I noticed he wouldn't meet my eyes. The surgery was scheduled for a Tuesday in March. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't button my shirt. Ryan drove me to the hospital in silence. The roads were empty, the sky still dark. I kept waiting for him to say something. Anything. To reassure me. To thank me. He didn't speak the entire drive. In the pre-op room they wheeled Gloria past my bed. I expected her to stop. To say something. To acknowledge what I was about to do for her. She didn't even look at me. Just stared straight ahead, her jaw set, her eyes flat and distant. A nurse patted my arm. You're very brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified. The anesthesiologist leaned over me with a kind smile. Ready? I wasn't. But I said yes anyway. Because that's what you do for family. You sacrifice. You prove you belong. When I woke up, the pain was immediate and overwhelming. My left side felt like it had been torn open and stitched back together with barbed wire. A nurse stood by my bed checking monitors. The surgery went perfectly. Gloria's kidney is functioning beautifully. I tried to feel relieved. I tried to feel proud. Instead I felt hollow. Carved out. Like something essential had been taken and I'd never get it back. Ryan visited that first evening. He stayed 10 minutes. Stood near the door with his hands in his pockets. I need to check on Mom, he said, kissing my forehead without warmth. Then he was gone. I lay there alone, staring at the ceiling tiles. Counting them to distract myself from the pain. 43 tiles. Fluorescent lights humming overhead. The antiseptic smell of the hospital. The beep of machines monitoring my vital signs. I had never felt more alone in my entire life. On day 2, Ryan didn't visit at all. A nurse mentioned he'd been with Gloria most of the day. Your mother-in-law is doing remarkably well, she said with a smile. You gave her a wonderful gift. I tried to smile back. My face felt frozen. On day 3, the nurse came in to check my vitals. Your husband is here. For a moment I felt something like hope. Maybe he was finally here to take me home. To tell me it was over. To thank me properly. Then Ryan walked in. And he wasn't alone. There was a woman with him. Blonde, athletic, wearing those expensive yoga pants and a diamond bracelet that caught the fluorescent light. And a man in a tailored suit carrying a leather briefcase. Ryan didn't sit down. Didn't come close to the bed. Just stood at the foot like I was a stranger. Maya, this is Cassie. And my attorney, Mr. Hoffman. My brain couldn't process the words. I looked at the woman. At the lawyer. Back at Ryan. What? Mr. Hoffman opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency. Professional. Detached. Mrs. Bennett, your husband is filing for dissolution of marriage. He placed a stack of papers on the table beside my bed. These are the documents. The words didn't connect. Dissolution. Marriage. Papers. I looked at Ryan, waiting for him to laugh. To say it was a mistake. To do something human. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Cassie shifted uncomfortably. Her hand moved to rest on her stomach. That's when I saw it clearly. The swell of her belly under her fitted top. 7 months pregnant, maybe more. 7 months. The affair didn't start after Gloria got sick. It started before. Long before. The nurse's phone buzzed on her cart. He glanced at the screen, then at me. Her expression shifted to something I'll never forget. Pity. Pure, devastating pity. Mrs. Bennett, you have a message. From Gloria Bennett. My hands were shaking too badly to hold the phone. The nurse read it aloud, her voice getting quieter with each word. Thanks for the kidney. Ryan will finally get his inheritance now. You were always temporary. The room spun. The machines beeped steadily. Somewhere down the hall someone laughed. I looked at Ryan. Cassie. At the lawyer with his briefcase full of papers designed to erase 7 years of my life. Why? My voice came out broken. Small. Ryan finally met my eyes. His expression was cold. Mom needed you. Now she doesn't. And that's when I understood. I had never been family. I had been a resource. An asset. Spare parts to be harvested and discarded. They had used me. And now they were throwing me away. My sister Tanya picked me up from the hospital 4 days later. Ryan was already gone. Moved out of our house. Into a downtown condo with Cassie, according to a terse text message he sent at 11 o'clock the night before. No apology. No explanation. Just an address where I could send any of his remaining belongings. Tanya helped me into the passenger seat of her 10-year-old Honda Civic. Every movement sent pain radiating from the incision. I'd refused the wheelchair the nurse offered, too proud or too stubborn or too broken to accept I couldn't even walk to a car on my own. The drive to Kentwood took 20 minutes. I cried the entire way. Not loud, dramatic crying. Just silent tears running down my face while I stared out the window at a world that looked exactly the same as it had a week ago. Trees budding with early spring growth. People walking dogs. Kids riding bikes. Everything normal. Everything unchanged. Except me. I was completely different. You can stay as long as you need, Tanya said quietly. She kept her eyes on the road. Gave me space to fall apart without commentary. Tanya's apartment was small. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom shared with her 2 teenagers. Bryce was 15, tall and quiet, always wearing headphones. Simone was 17, sharp-eyed and protective like her mother. They'd converted the living room into a makeshift recovery space for me. Blankets stacked on the couch, pillows borrowed from their own beds. A folding table set up with water bottles and my prescription pain medication. We're good at making room, Tanya said, helping me onto the couch. We've done it before. I knew she meant after her divorce 3 years ago, when she'd downsized from a house to this apartment. When she'd rebuilt her entire life on a nursing assistant salary. I should have paid more attention then. Should have learned from her resilience. Instead, I'd been wrapped up in my own marriage. My own carefully constructed denial. The first week blurred together. I could barely move. The surgical incision burned with every breath, every shift of position. I took the pain medication on schedule, but it only dulled the physical pain. The emotional pain was something else entirely. Something no pill could touch. Tanya worked double shifts at a nursing home, 16-hour days that left her exhausted. The kids were at school most of the time. I spent hours alone staring at the TV without actually watching anything. My mind kept replaying that hospital room scene. Ryan's cold voice. Cassie's pregnant belly. The lawyer's indifferent tone. Gloria's text message. You were always temporary. The words looped in my head like a song I couldn't stop hearing. Over and over. A nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Simone came home from school one afternoon and found me crying on the couch. She didn't say anything. Just sat down next to me and held my hand until I stopped. 2 weeks after moving in, I forced myself to open my laptop. I needed to face reality. Check the bank accounts. Pay bills. Figure out what was left of my life. What I found was devastation. Our joint checking account had $143 in it. Our savings account showed a balance of 0. Completely drained. Then I saw the credit cards. 3 of them in my name. Cards I didn't remember opening. All maxed out. I clicked through the statements with shaking hands. Charges I didn't recognize. Purchases I'd never made. Cash advances taken out months ago. Total debt, $47,000. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Then I found the second mortgage. Someone had borrowed $95,000 against the equity in our house. The loan documents were scanned and saved in our shared cloud storage. I opened them. Stared at the signature page. The signature looked like mine. The loops of them and P were close enough. But I'd never signed this document. Never even seen it before. Ryan had forged my signature. The medical bills started arriving that same week. Thick envelopes with hospital logos. Gloria's surgery. Post-op care. Medications. Physical therapy sessions. Insurance had covered some of it, but the gaps Ryan had promised to handle were now my responsibility. Total medical debt, $33,000. I made $48,000 a year as a teacher. After taxes, I took home about $3,200 a month. Before the surgery, that had been enough. Barely, but enough. Now it was impossible. The garnishment notices arrived within days. Creditors were coming after me. Collection agencies called Tanya's apartment phone at all hours. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I couldn't afford groceries. I couldn't afford anything. I sat on Tanya's couch at 2 in the morning one night, surrounded by bills and statements and notices, and I finally understood the full scope of what Ryan had done. He didn't just leave me. He systematically destroyed me. 6 weeks after the surgery, I returned to work. I wasn't ready. My body still ached. I'd lost 15 pounds I couldn't afford to lose. Dark circles shadowed my eyes no matter how much sleep I managed to get. But I needed the paycheck desperately. My students noticed immediately. They were quieter around me. Gentler. A few of them asked if I was okay. I smiled and lied and said I was fine. During my planning period, I walked to the small storage room behind the art wing. This was where I used to run my pottery program, an after-school thing I'd started 3 years ago, funded entirely out of my own pocket. The kiln was still there, silent and cold. But the shelves were empty. I'd been renting a small studio space off campus for $400 a month to store supplies and finish student projects. Clay, tools, glazes, wheels. Years of accumulated materials and dozens of pieces students had been so proud of creating. I hadn't been able to pay the rent for 2 months. The landlord had cleared everything out and sold it to cover what I owed. Years of student work. My own pieces. All the tools and materials. Gone. I stood in that empty storage room and felt another layer of grief settle over me. Another thing Ryan had taken. Another piece of my life erased. Later that day, Dr. Helen Crawford called me into her office. I walked there expecting a reprimand. My performance had been terrible. My focus was non-existent. I was barely functional. Instead, Helen closed the door and gestured for me to sit. Her expression was serious but not unkind. I went through something similar 20 years ago. She said it quietly. Matter of fact. Then she handed me a folder. The district has an employee assistance program. Free counseling. Legal consultations. Financial planning resources. I want you to use it. I took the folder with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Why are you helping me? Helen's expression softened. Because someone helped me when I needed it. And because you're a good teacher, Maya. Don't let them take that from you too. I started working 3 side jobs just to contribute to Tanya's rent. During the day I taught full-time. At night I graded essays for an online education company. Mindless work that paid $12 an hour. I created social media graphics for small businesses I found on freelance websites. I tutored high school students via Zoom, helping them with college application essays and SAT prep. I slept 4 hours a night if I was lucky. Tanya worried. She'd find me at the kitchen table at midnight, laptop open, eyes burning with exhaustion. "You're going to make yourself sick." "I'm already sick," I said. Came out harsher than I meant. "I'm sorry. I need to help. I need to contribute something." Simone started bringing me tea in the evenings without being asked. Bryce offered to give up his bedroom so I could have privacy and a door that closed. I refused. I was already taking too much from them. From this family who had their own struggles, their own tight budget, their own lives that didn't need my disaster spilling into every corner. One Saturday afternoon, I forced myself to sort through the boxes of documents from the house. Things Ryan had left behind or hadn't cared enough to take. Old tax returns. Insurance papers. Bank statements from years ago. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I just needed to organize. To feel like I had control over something even if it was just filing papers. Then I found it. A life insurance policy. The paper was crisp, official. I unfolded it slowly. Policyholder, Ryan Bennett. Insured, Maya Bennett. Beneficiary, Ryan Bennett. Death benefit, $250,000. Policy date, January 15th. 2 months before Gloria's surgery. I read it 3 times. My hands went completely numb. The paper slipped from my fingers and drifted to the floor. If I'd died during surgery, if there'd been complications, an infection, a surgical error, anything, Ryan would have collected $250,000. The timeline clicked into place with sickening clarity. He'd taken out the policy before Gloria even called about needing a transplant. Before the family got tested. Before he knew I was a match. He'd been planning this. I wasn't family. I wasn't even a person to him. I was an investment, an asset, a resource to be extracted and discarded, or cashed in if circumstances aligned correctly. I picked up the policy with shaking hands, took a photo of it with my phone. Then I found the folder Helen had given me and pulled out the legal aid number. My hands were still trembling when I dialed. A woman answered on the 3rd ring. Legal Aid of Western Michigan. "This is Marcus Webb's office." "I need help," I said. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. "I think my husband committed fraud. And I think he was hoping I'd die." Marcus Webb met me at his office the following Monday morning. His workspace was small, cluttered with case files and legal textbooks, tucked into a converted house that served as the Legal Aid of Western Michigan headquarters. He was in his 50s with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen too many stories like mine. I handed him the life insurance policy. He read it slowly, his expression unchanging. Then he set it down and looked at me. "Tell me everything." So I did. The shrinking savings account. The pressure from Ryan's family. The surgery. The divorce papers in my hospital room. Gloria's text message. The forged signatures on the second mortgage. The maxed out credit cards I'd never opened. Marcus took notes on a yellow legal pad. His handwriting was terrible, but his questions were precise. He asked about dates, amounts, who was present when decisions were made. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he tapped the life insurance policy with his pen. "This is more than divorce, Maya. This is financial exploitation. Possibly fraud. Can you prove it?" "I can try." He pulled out a blank bankruptcy petition form. "We'll file this with a specific request for investigation. The trustee will look into the forged documents, the fraudulent debts. If we can establish a pattern of exploitation, we might be able to get criminal charges filed." I didn't let myself hope. Hope had gotten me into this mess. "What are the chances?" Marcus met my eyes. "Honestly, I don't know. But I've been doing this for 20 years and I've never seen a case this clear-cut. The life insurance policy alone is damning. Combined with everything else, we have a real shot." He filed the bankruptcy petition that afternoon. Then he gave me a card for a counselor, Dr. Patel, who worked with the employee assistance program the school district offered. "You need someone to talk to who isn't a lawyer," Marcus said. "Someone who can help you process this." I started seeing Dr. Patel twice a week. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a way of asking questions that made me think instead of just react. She didn't judge. Didn't pity. Just listened. 6 months passed like that. Slowly. Painfully. But something shifted. I was still living with Tanya. Still working 3 jobs. Still buried in debt that garnished my paycheck every month. But I was functioning. Surviving. The bankruptcy was moving through the system. Marcus called every few weeks with updates. The trustee was investigating, documents were being subpoenaed, things were progressing. At school, something unexpected happened. My students rallied around me. I don't know who started it, probably Jada Morrison or one of the other seniors. But they organized a fundraiser. A bake sale during lunch periods. An art auction featuring student work. They raised $800. When they presented me with the check, I cried in front of 30 teenagers. "This is for your pottery program, Ms. Parker," Jada said firmly. "You always funded it yourself. Now we're funding it." It wasn't enough to rent the studio space back. But it was enough to buy clay and basic tools. I started teaching pottery again during lunch periods, right there in the storage room behind the art wing. Kids showed up who'd never taken art before. They sat at makeshift tables and shaped clay with their hands and talked about their lives, their families, their struggles, their dreams. I realized I wasn't just teaching. I was healing them and myself. Then on a Tuesday in October, the call came. I was in the middle of teaching a sophomore class, demonstrating watercolor techniques, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. School policy. No phones during instruction. It buzzed again. And again. During the passing period I checked. 7 missed calls. 3 voicemails. All from Ryan. My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard from him in 6 months. Not since Marcus had sent a cease and desist letter regarding any further contact outside of official divorce proceedings. I stepped into the hallway away from the rush of students and listened to the first voicemail. Ryan's voice was different. Tight. Panicked. Stripped of the cold confidence he'd had in that hospital room. "Why? Mom's kidney failed. Infection. They say she needs another transplant immediately. Cassie can't donate. Pregnancy complications. You're still the best match. We need to talk. Please call me back." The second message was longer. More desperate. "Maya, I know you're angry, but this is life or death. We can work something out. There's money from Mom's estate. We can settle the debt, help you out, whatever you need. Just call me." The third message was just breathing. Heavy. Ragged. Then a click. I stood in the hallway, students rushing past me to their next classes, and I felt nothing. No sympathy. No anger. No guilt. Just a cold, clear certainty settling into my bones. I wasn't doing this again. I was about to delete the voicemails when Jada Morrison appeared beside me. She had a hall pass in her hand, probably headed to the library. "Miss Parker, you okay?" I forced a smile. "I'm fine." Jada's sharp eyes didn't buy it. "That didn't sound fine." She nodded toward my phone. "Was that about your ex's mom?" I didn't know how much my students knew. I'd never told them directly about the surgery, the divorce, any of it. But high school kids heard everything. They saw everything. "Yeah. She needs another kidney." Jada was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that stopped me cold. "My aunt donated a kidney to her sister 5 years ago. She said the doctors tested her for everything, blood, genetics, all kinds of stuff. Did they find anything about you?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, my aunt found out she had this rare blood thing that made her like a super donor or something. The doctors told her she could help a lot of people. Did they tell you anything like that?" My mind went blank. Then it raced. The donor screening. The endless tests. Blood draws. Tissue typing. Genetic panels. I'd signed so many consent forms I'd stopped reading them. Been poked and prodded and scanned for weeks. The doctors had huddled in conversations I wasn't part of, speaking in medical terminology I didn't understand. But no one had ever sat me down and explained what they'd found. What made me such a perfect match? "I don't know," I said slowly. "They never told me." Jada's expression shifted to something like concern. "You should find out, Miss Parker. My aunt said it was important. Like really important." The bell rang. Jada hurried off to class. I stood there in the empty hallway, my phone still in my hand, Ryan's voicemails still undeleted. That afternoon, during my planning period, I called the hospital and requested my full medical records from the surgery. They said it would take 7 to 10 business days. I gave them Tanya's address and waited. The records arrived a week later. 63 pages. Single-spaced medical documentation, test results, surgical notes, post-op assessments. I sat at Tanya's kitchen table after midnight, everyone else asleep, and read every word. Most of it was technical jargon I didn't understand. abbreviations, numbers, medical codes. But buried on page 47 in a section labeled Donor Compatibility Assessment, I found it. Patient exhibits rare HLA haplotype configuration, B57-01, DRB103-01, DQB1201, with extraordinary cross-match compatibility across multiple tissue groups. Universal donor potential noted for specific recipient populations. Genetic profile flagged for National Registry consideration. Recommend follow-up counseling regarding donation implications. I read it 3 times. Then I grabbed my laptop and started Googling every term. HLA haplotype. Cross-match compatibility. Universal donor potential. What I learned made my hands shake. I wasn't just a match for Gloria. I was a potential match for dozens, maybe hundreds of people with specific rare tissue types. My genetic makeup was medically valuable. Exceptionally rare. The doctors had known this. They documented it. Flagged it. Recommended follow-up counseling. No one had ever told me. Ryan didn't just marry me. He married a medical goldmine. A walking organ bank. And Gloria didn't just need me. He wanted to keep me in the family as insurance. As a backup plan for future needs. The inheritance Gloria had mentioned in that text message. Ryan will finally get his inheritance now. It wasn't about money. Or maybe it was, but it was also about this. About keeping me accessible. About maintaining control over a resource they saw as theirs. Ryan's family didn't see me as a person. They saw me as spare parts. Renewable. Harvestable. I closed the laptop. Sat in the dark kitchen listening to Tanya snore softly in the next room. The refrigerator hummed. The heater kicked on. And something inside me hardened into steel. I picked up my phone and called Marcus Webb. He answered on the second ring, his voice groggy. Maya? It's 1 a.m. I need to show you something, I said. My voice was steady. Come. And then I need you to help me make sure they never do this to anyone else. Marcus met me at a coffee shop near the courthouse the next morning. I brought everything. The medical records with the genetic compatibility assessment highlighted. The life insurance policy. Printed copies of every fraudulent credit card statement. The forged second mortgage documents. Bank statements showing the systematic draining of our accounts. I'd organized it all into a folder, chronological, labeled with sticky notes. Marcus ordered 2 coffees and spread the documents across the table. He read through everything methodically, his expression unreadable. He took notes. Asked questions about dates and amounts. Cross-referenced the life insurance policy date against the timeline of Gloria's diagnosis. When he finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Just sat there staring at the life insurance policy, his jaw tight. Then he said, "My wife donated a kidney to her ex-husband's father 12 years ago. I wasn't expecting that. I'd assumed Marcus took these cases because of some abstract sense of justice. Not because of something personal." Marcus stared at his coffee. Didn't drink it. Her name was Rebecca. She was 28. They'd been married 3 years. The father needed a transplant and Rebecca volunteered because she loved him. Wanted to prove she was committed to the family. His voice was flat, practiced like he'd told this story before, but it still hurt. 2 weeks after the surgery, while she was still recovering, he served her with divorce papers. Turns out he'd been cheating for months. She was devastated. He paused. Took a breath. Then the medical bills came. He'd stuck her with all the debt. She couldn't work. Couldn't pay. Lost her apartment. She spiraled. His voice broke slightly. She died by suicide 16 months later. My throat tightened. Marcus, I'm so sorry. He met my eyes. I became a legal aid attorney because of her. I've been looking for a case like yours for 12 years. One with clear evidence of coercion, fraud, and exploitation. The life insurance policy. The forged signatures. The genetic compatibility they never properly disclosed to you. This is what I need to establish legal precedent. He leaned forward. Will you let me fight for you? I didn't hesitate. Yes. Marcus filed an amended bankruptcy petition that afternoon, specifically requesting a fraud investigation. Within 2 weeks, a bankruptcy trustee named Linda Morales was assigned to my case. Linda was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of intensity that made people nervous. She was thorough, relentless, and deeply unimpressed by Ryan's paper trail. She subpoenaed bank records going back 5 years. Credit card statements. Loan documents. She interviewed me for hours in a windowless office, documenting every forged signature, every hidden debt, every lie Ryan had told. She asked questions I hadn't thought to ask myself. When did I last see our tax returns? Had I ever signed a power of attorney? Did Ryan have access to my social security number? The second mortgage was the smoking gun. Ryan's signature was legitimate. Mine was not. Linda hired a handwriting analyst who confirmed what we already knew: forgery, clear and deliberate. Linda forwarded the findings to the Michigan Attorney General's office. A criminal investigation was opened. Meanwhile, I filed a formal complaint with the hospital's ethics board. Marcus helped me draft it, carefully worded, backed by documentation. I submitted the life insurance policy as evidence that I was not a voluntary donor operating in good faith. I was a target. A resource to be exploited. The hospital's legal team took the complaint seriously. They launched an internal review of the donor screening process, specifically questioning why I was never properly counseled about my rare genetic compatibility and whether there was undue family pressure involved. Ryan started getting subpoenas. So did Gloria. So did Donald, Ryan's father. The walls were closing in. One evening in late November, I received a Facebook message from an account I didn't recognize. The profile picture was blank. The name was just initials. "This is Cassie. We need to talk. Please." My first instinct was to delete it. Block the account. This woman had stood in my hospital room, pregnant with my husband's child, while a lawyer handed me divorce papers. I owed her nothing. But curiosity won. Or maybe it was something else. I need to understand. I messaged back. When and where? We met at Riverside Park the next afternoon. Neutral ground. Public. Safe. Cassie was sitting on a bench near the playground, her pregnancy now in its final weeks. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She didn't look like the polished woman who'd stood in that hospital room. She looked scared. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. Ryan took out a life insurance policy on me. She handed me a printed document. I unfolded it slowly. Policyholder, Ryan Bennett. Insured, Cassie Brennan. Beneficiary, Ryan Bennett. Death benefit $300,000. Policy date, 1 week after Gloria's surgery. My hands went cold. I found this 2 weeks ago, Cassie said, her voice shaking. I was looking for our health insurance cards and found it in his file cabinet. I confronted him. He said it was just standard financial planning. That all couples do this. She looked at me. But I'm not stupid. I looked at the dates. I looked at the donor testing results he'd printed out and left in his office. I'm not a match for Gloria. My blood type is wrong. But I didn't know that when he started dating me. Her eyes filled with tears. He was going to use me as a backup. If you couldn't donate or if Gloria needed more later, he'd have pushed me into it. And if I died during childbirth or surgery. She didn't finish. Didn't need to. I felt a strange kinship with this woman I should have hated. Why are you telling me this? Cassie pulled a USB drive from her purse. Text messages. Between Ryan and his mother. Planning. Backup strategies. Contingency donors. I found them on his laptop when he was in the shower. Her hands were shaking. I'm terrified of him, Maya. I need to protect my baby. And I need him away from both of us. I took the USB drive. Thank you. Cassie wiped her eyes. I'm sorry. For what happened to you. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I believed her. Marcus opened the USB drive that evening in his office. I sat beside him while he clicked through the files. Text messages. Dozens of them. Between Ryan and Gloria. Between Ryan and his father. Some going back 2 years. We need a backup plan if Maya doesn't work out. Cassie's younger. Better health. Could be a good option. Do we tell her about the genetic testing? No. Keep it simple. The less she knows, the better. There were spreadsheets. Actual spreadsheets. Comparing potential donors. Medical compatibility. Health history. Financial vulnerability. My name was at the top. Cassie's was second. There were 3 other names I didn't recognize. Marcus's face was white. This is conspiracy. Premeditated exploitation. This is criminal. The forensic accountants Marcus had hired finished their audit of Gloria's finances a week later. They presented their findings in Marcus's office. I sat across from them listening to numbers that didn't make sense. Gloria Bennett was not wealthy. She was drowning in debt. 3 mortgages on 2 properties, the house in Grand Rapids and a condo in Florida that was in foreclosure. Credit card debt totaling $180,000. Medical bills she'd ignored for years. Tax liens. Judgments from creditors. Her estate that Ryan kept mentioning? It didn't exist. Everything she owned was leveraged, underwater, built on borrowed money and lies. Gloria had been running a financial shell game for decades, using Ryan's real estate connections to shuffle assets, hide debt and maintain the illusion of wealth. She'd convinced her own son that there was an inheritance waiting, that his sacrifices would be rewarded. Ryan had believed her. Married me, and probably would have married Cassie next, to secure organ donors because Gloria's lifestyle of excess and non-compliance meant she'd never qualify for a deceased donor kidney through legitimate channels. The infection that caused the kidney to fail? Predictable. Gloria had refused to take her anti-rejection medications properly. Too expensive, she'd claimed, despite spending thousands on trips and designer clothes. She'd destroyed the organ I gave her through pure negligence. And now she wanted another. Linda Morales presented the findings to the Michigan Attorney General's office, along with the text messages from the USB drive, the life insurance policies, the forged documents, the genetic compatibility records the hospital had never properly disclosed. Ryan was formally charged with forgery, financial exploitation, and fraud. Gloria was investigated for insurance fraud and conspiracy to commit fraud. The criminal case moved forward. I sat in Marcus's office after the meeting, staring at the stack of documents that represented the systematic destruction of my life. What happens now? I asked. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Now we wait. The bankruptcy will discharge your debts. The criminal trial will take months, maybe longer. But Maya. He looked at me seriously. You're going to be okay. You're going to survive this. I wanted to believe him. My phone buzzed. Another voicemail from Ryan. I didn't listen to it. I knew what it would say. More begging. More promises. More lies. I deleted it without opening it. Then I walked out of Marcus's office into the cold November air and drove back to Tanya's apartment, where my niece had saved me dinner and my nephew had left a note on the fridge that said, "You're braver than you think." I wasn't sure if that was true, but I was still here. Still fighting. Still refusing to give them anything more. That had to count for something. Ryan called me one final time. It was a Friday afternoon. I was in my classroom cleaning paintbrushes after school when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to answer. I put it on speaker. Marcus was still in the building. We'd planned to meet about the upcoming trial, so I texted him to come to my classroom. He arrived just as Ryan started talking. Why? His voice was different. Broken. Desperate. Stripped of every trace of the cold confidence he'd had in that hospital room. Please. I know I hurt you. I know what I did was wrong. But my mother is dying. She needs you. Just this one thing and I'll never ask you for anything again. We'll settle everything, the debt, the divorce, all of it. I'll give you whatever you want. Please. Marcus stood by the door, arms crossed, listening. I was silent for a long moment. Then I said calm and clear, no. No. Ryan sounded genuinely shocked. Like the concept of me refusing him was incomprehensible. Why, she'll die. That's not my problem. My voice didn't waver. Didn't break. You took my kidney, my money, my home, and my dignity. You forged my signature. You took out a life insurance policy hoping I'd die. You turned me into a commodity. I gave your mother 1 kidney. She destroyed it through her own negligence. I'm not giving her another. You're killing her. No, Ryan. You are. You and Gloria made your choices. You lied. You manipulated. You exploited. Now live with the consequences. I paused. Don't call me again. I hung up. Marcus placed a legal document on my desk. Sign this. It's a formal refusal of donation request, protecting you from any future legal claims that you abandoned Gloria or acted with malice. You're asserting your bodily autonomy. I signed without hesitation. 2 weeks later, Ryan was arraigned on fraud charges. He pleaded not guilty. His attorney argued that the forged signatures were misunderstandings, that the life insurance policy was standard financial planning, that everything could be explained. The judge set trial for 8 months out. Gloria survived on dialysis. She was placed on the transplant list, but her history of non-compliance, the missed medications, the refused follow-up appointments, the infection she'd caused through negligence, made her low priority. She'd wait years for a kidney if she ever got one at all. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. My bankruptcy was discharged 4 months after filing. Every fraudulent debt, the credit cards I'd never opened, the second mortgage with my forged signature, the medical bills Ryan had stuck me with, was wiped clean. I didn't get rich. I got free. My credit score was destroyed. It would take years to rebuild. But I didn't care. I was alive. I was employed. I had Tanya, Bryce, Simone, my students, and a future that wasn't buried under Ryan's lies. Marcus didn't charge me a single cent. When I tried to pay him something, anything, he refused. My wife didn't get justice, he told me on the courthouse steps after the discharge hearing. His eyes were distant, remembering. But you did. That's enough for me. I hugged him. This quiet man who'd fought for me when no one else would. Who'd seen his wife's story and mine and decided it wouldn't end the same way. I returned to teaching full-time without the crushing weight of 3 side jobs. I started sleeping 6 hours a night instead of 4. I gained back the weight I'd lost. Color returned to my face. My students noticed. "Miss Parker, you look different," one of them said. "Better." The pottery program grew. 20 students now, meeting during lunch and after school. Dr. Helen Crawford approved a small budget for supplies. Not much, but enough. We worked in the storage room behind the art wing, shaping clay with our hands, creating something beautiful from raw earth. I told them the truth one day when a student asked why I loved pottery so much. You can break something and rebuild it. It won't look the same, but it can still be strong. Maybe stronger than before. They understood what I meant. I started a blog on a Saturday night in March. I called it The Cost of Giving, Financial Literacy for Women Leaving Abuse. The first post was my story, written plainly. No embellishment, just facts. I included scanned documents, redacted for privacy but clear in their evidence. The life insurance policy, the forged mortgage, the medical records showing the genetic compatibility no one had explained to me. I wrote about the signs I'd missed, the red flags I'd ignored, the coercion disguised as family loyalty, the systematic financial destruction. I posted it at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night and expected maybe 10 people to read it. By Monday morning, the post had 3,000 views. By the end of the week, 15,000. Women commented, sharing their own stories. Some had donated organs. Some had donated money to partners who betrayed them. Some had donated years of their lives to men who saw them as resources to be exploited and discarded. I kept writing. I posted about protecting yourself financially before marriage. Understanding medical debt. Recognizing financial abuse. The warning signs of coercion. Legal resources for fraud victims. Marcus Webb contributed guest posts about legal protections. Dr. Patel wrote about trauma and recovery. Other women sent me their stories and I shared them with permission. Within 6 months, I had 50,000 followers. News outlets reached out. I was interviewed on a local podcast, then a regional radio show. I wasn't famous, I was just visible enough to help people who needed it. Marcus and I partnered to offer free monthly legal clinics for women navigating financial abuse and divorce. We met in the public library conference room. Sometimes 5 women showed up. Sometimes 20. Every single one of them mattered. 2 years after the divorce, I received a letter from the hospital. I opened it at Tanya's kitchen table on a Tuesday morning. The letterhead was official. My hands shook as I read. My rare genetic compatibility had been added to the National Organ Donor Registry, not for living donation but for deceased donor coordination. If I ever died, my organs could save multiple lives. But that wasn't all. The letter explained that my genetic profile had already been used, with my permission, granted through proper consent this time, to match 3 transplant recipients with deceased donors who shared similar rare markers. A single father in Ohio, a college student in Illinois, a grandmother in Indiana. My genetic information had helped save them. I didn't give them my organs. But my existence in the database helped doctors make connections they wouldn't have found otherwise. I read the letter 3 times. Then I framed it. Not because I was proud, though I was, but because it reminded me of something essential. What I gave was my choice now. On my terms. With full consent. With dignity. Jada Morrison graduated that spring. She earned a full scholarship to Howard University for pre-law. At graduation she found me in the crowd and hugged me tight. I'm going to study medical ethics because of you, Ms. Parker. I'm going to protect people like you. I attended the ceremony with Tanya, Bryce, and Simone. We took pictures together laughing. A family built not from blood but from survival and love. Dr. Helen Crawford pulled me aside after the ceremony. I never told you the whole story, she said quietly. 20 years ago, I donated a kidney to my ex-husband's brother. He divorced me 3 weeks later. I lost everything, my home, my savings, my sense of self. I rebuilt my life by going back to school, getting my doctorate, moving into administration. I recognized you the moment you came back to work after surgery. I saw myself. My eyes filled with tears. You've been mentoring me this whole time. Helen smiled. Someone helped me when I needed it. I'm just passing it forward. That night I went home to Tanya's apartment. Still small. Still cramped. But full of life and laughter and safety. I opened my laptop and wrote a new blog post. The title, What We're Worth. I wrote about Ryan chasing an inheritance that never existed, losing everything in the process. I wrote about Gloria building a life on borrowed money and lies, ending up alone on dialysis with a transplant list that might never call her name. I wrote about myself, losing everything, and building something real from nothing. I wrote, they thought I was worth a kidney, worth a signature they could forge, worth a life insurance payout if I died on the operating table. But they were wrong. I'm worth more than what they could take from me. I'm worth what I choose to give. On my terms. To people who deserve it. To causes that matter. That's the difference between us. That's what we're worth. I posted it. Then I closed the laptop, made tea and sat with Tanya on the couch. We watched a movie. We laughed. Outside, the Michigan winter was brutal and cold. But inside it was warm. I had survived. And survival, I'd learned, was its own kind of revenge. Not the dramatic, destructive kind. The quiet kind. The kind that meant waking up every morning and choosing to keep going. The kind that meant helping others so they didn't have to suffer alone. The kind that meant building a life worth living from the ruins of what was taken. Ryan lost everything chasing something that never existed. I lost everything and built something real. That's what we're worth. If this story of revenge through survival resonated with you, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was discovering Gloria's fake wealth was all borrowed money and lies. What was your favorite moment? Let me know in the comments below. Don't want to miss more empowering stories like this.